right now on the internets.
Hi, Internet.
And we are graced with the presence of Mr. Benjamin Scragg himself.
I would like to think that I radiate grace.
You do,
but
you do, my fine friend.
Mostly people just tell me that I'm fancy, so
That also.
I can live with that.
That also.
I can live with that.
So we were just talking about last night, game night.
Yeah.
And you were telling Paul and I here about a game called Salmon.
Happy Salmon.
Happy Salmon. Okay.
Happy Salmon. In fact, we should demonstrate a Happy Salmon right now. And then you pound it and a high five. And I would say switcheroo, but I like being on this side. Actually, has anyone started asking you a bunch of questions?
Not yet.
Well, maybe I'm the one.
Well, we can do that. We can have a conversation here. Basically, we are like just doing interviews with folks and having kind of a hosted and a correspondent kind of deal and a conversation with people who are popping in and out, who are virtually attending the conference. And I mean, I wanted to talk to you about all kinds of things.
Yep.
But I did see that you were on the schedule. I think it was yesterday, talking about squad goals. Or is that coming up?
That was yesterday. Okay. That was a really great conversation, and it was funny because there might have been official. I'll have to check the program, but there were like 8 people listed as presenters, and it turned out in the room, which got pretty crowded, there were probably more like 20 people in the room. It just wound up being a conversation across the room of stuff that I think will resonate with you, which is, we come to specifically, I think the OLC conferences have been this experience for me more than other places I've been, where you come, you show up, you meet somebody, you spend 2 or 3 days hanging out with them, and then on the other side of that, there's a project or a new relationship that starts that like you invest time in or just carry over and good stuff comes out of it. And that happens a lot. So yeah, I think this is maybe my 5th OLC conference, and it just has kind of like the community that I've built out of this. I started with a story. It's really funny that, and for context, our squad goals session was just around people that are now more friends than anything, and like how we've built relationships out of just showing up and meeting people at a conference. And so that's interesting. And then it was a lot of conversation with people around, well, how do you do that? And so it's like in a lot of different ways. And there's not, it's not even about like, is there a formula or not? It was really just about, I mean, it's funny. Sitting here with you doing this is really reminiscent, because a year ago at this time, we were just putting the wraps on what had happened the year before, which was just like dove head first into a podcast, right? Like, and I had no prior experience doing that, and just through sheer energy and force, we made that happen. Mostly you.
It's this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because I mean, just a couple of weeks ago I was in Arizona, in the beautiful state of Arizona, and I got a chance to visit you, do a brief little tour. I got a chance to go over and visit Angela Gunder, get a brief little tour, and then we had a lovely dinner, great music, and so there were 3 moments in a tightly packed family vacation where we were meeting up with family. Well, anyway, Lindsay's brothers, at one point we were hanging out with them. We were talking about plans of what we were doing while we were down there. It came up that I was meeting up with friends, and they were like, "Who are these friends?
How do you know these people?
How do you know these people?" And I talked, well, we met at a conference, and my brother-in-law Lee was like, "Wait, you met these people at a conference, and you're calling them up and hanging out with them on your on your vacation? Like, so how,
educators, man.
Yeah. So, and truly that experiment, the podcast was the Innovation Labcast.
Yeah.
That was an experiment where we were basically like these relationships that form, these conference experiences are like super valuable, high intensity.
Yeah.
And then we all go back to our respective locations and go back to the work and look forward to the next year or the next time we come back together. But
yeah,
the Innovation Labcast was an attempt to, on a weekly basis, keep the conversation going. And truly, I don't know about you, that was, I felt like a year of my life was an OLC conference.
Yeah. So there's that. I mean, I think Angela and I were joking about this yesterday because she was asking me about an episode we did that I didn't remember at all. Yeah. I don't remember, in fact. But then she would remind me of the dynamic of most of that, which was just a lot of Angela and I just cross-talking, bouncing ideas, and you inserting just perfectly like, and just your best Robert Siegel, and just like and dropping that in, and yeah. So I mean, I think that was one of those pieces that I would tell my friends. So in the in the years before that, Wednesday nights at 9:00, we'd always meet. Shout out to the Little Rock Bar in Columbus, Ohio, and my dear friend Joe Peppercorn. We'd always meet on Wednesday nights and have Joe Pep night, and just would meet for a Manhattan and some talk and go our separate ways. And we started podcasting on Wednesday nights, and at first I'd tell my buddies like, I kind of got this other thing going on, but I would tell friends and family it was more like doing that was investing in a relationship, like with you, with Angela, and that time was always really cool. And it was also, the one thing that's cool about coming here too is, for me, and it's maybe just because maybe I do have a dark heart, but like some of this is coming here and like getting the kind of level set, like what I'm doing at home with what's happening at the conference. And I don't mean that, I guess, in a competitive way, but I have worked at institutions, and it just has worked out this way, that are really big. And so I'm very empathetic and have had lots of conversations with folks who come from smaller institutions or places that are perceived to have, like, or not perceived, but do, let's say, have fewer resources, or the argument is at a big institution you have more resources. I think you have bigger structure sometimes, but it's definitely probably a fair way to frame that. But just in a big institution, what has seemed to me has been that just the inertia of what you're doing and put within the scope of just an institution is sometimes hard to see outside of, well, what are other places doing? Or some of the work we've done, people haven't been as interested in, like, well, what's everyone else doing? So coming here is a good opportunity to see, like, well, how are we doing? And what are other folks doing? Oh, actually, somehow, like, we're on the right track. Oh, thanks, leadership, or whoever's steering that. So it's just been one of those times, like, these conferences provide that experience, and then getting a chance to like talk with you all has been interesting because or on the podcast, because it was a little bit of that like weekly check of like, I'm not just getting swallowed, and part of that is I just, as I'm sitting here talking and I am in my head like working through this, I'd like to think I'm not rambling, is I think it's because the nature of like the work that we have been doing in this space is constantly growing and changing. And even if there's true north, I use this analogy all the time because now I've seen Moana, my daughters, so we're watching Moana all the time, of wayfinding, right? Good. And so you're trying to navigate, but it's not just that you're trying to navigate to a star that's a fixed point. The water underneath you is moving. So you're constantly having to like, I want to go there. I think I'm on the right track. Have I drifted? Or look at all these other things I could be doing. So like the tools, the opportunities, the trends, like they're all super cool, but they can also be exhausting. So I think that is a piece of like, and then how do we make this happen in this place? Having the opportunity to talk to other people, like, oh, you're doing a similar thing. You had success with that. So last thing I'll say, I was just telling someone last night, like, podcasting was such a horrifying experience because when you look at the wave file of your voice track and it just goes on and on and on and yours just sits there flatlining, it's the most horrifying thing. No. And I now realize I've given you at least a 5-minute soliloquy of nothingness. So
untrue.
In a meta way, I'm going to actually make a note to myself right now that says I'm horrified. What's up, Dave?
What's happening? What is happening?
Let me ask you some questions.
All right, hit me.
I just have to literally write that, and you can verify that. So you have talked to, I'm guessing you've had fun over the last few days talking to folks.
It has been fun.
What are you learning? What's happening here as folks come through?
Well, one thing is that I love these kind of experiments within a conference, like our work with Angela in the past in the innovation lab, which continues here. Keegan is doing great work with it. These experiments within the conference, which this conference by far, Innovate and Accelerate, have been particularly valuable to me, mainly because of the relationships that have formed as a result of attending and participating. But then working with groups of people who are on a volunteer basis, helping think about ways we can incorporate some of the most valuable aspects of the conference experience, whether it's informal things that happen or things that happen as a result of formal, intentionally planned sorts of things, and doing experiments that attempt to amplify some of the best and most valuable aspects of the conference. That's what I've been doing here, and what's kind of fun is like the technology and stuff happening is it's great. It makes it possible for this to be amplified, but what it's doing is just amplifying the very things that I would love to be doing, even if this wasn't a thing. Like it's a great excuse to just sit down and talk with people who are transforming my own thinking in this work. I would like to do this anyway. It makes for a great excuse to actually do this. No, you're just like, man, I've peeled off. You are living your best life. So who else is on the docket? So we've got interviews lined up today. Today's probably the biggest, the heaviest day with the most lined up things, which has also been, and John Stewart just came in and he's with us.
I'm out.
No. We just need to make some space for him because that's part of.
This is not going to do.
So this
was not in my rider. I was not going to share any screen time.
But you got your blue M&Ms. So
yes, it's true. Yeah. It's true.
What's that? Oh, am I out?
Oh,
okay. So we were just talking about
a whole bunch of stuff.
A
lot of me doing the very thing that I said I abhor on anytime you podcast. It's just a long line of me talking to Dave, just being no big deal. No big deal.
But John, we've been involved in this experience with OLC Live, and it's been a lot of fun. What are we doing today? We've got a lot of things lined up. I just had a fun conversation with Eric Skogsberg, who I think.
Oh, yes.
We talked. It was delightful because it was like 2 weeks ago. He put this Twitter tweet out on the interwebs that said something about. He was responding to a prompt about one of the most valuable aspects of his educational learning experience, looking back, and he brought up his undergraduate experience, which was completely ungraded, or what he described as using narrative evaluation.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was new to me. And we had this great conversation this morning about we're all about innovation here at this conference. How are we innovating in higher education? But sometimes in all of that, sometimes we don't think or question the very basic tenets of what are just standard practices, such as grading procedures. And we had a great conversation. And then I talked with Janice Smith about yoga before you came in. All kinds of conversations lined up this afternoon. But,
I mean, it would have been, interestingly enough, I've seen design thinking has been pretty prolific this year at the conference, and conversations. Obviously, down in the innovation lab, there's a lot going on. I'll probably dig in there a little bit this morning. But just I had a chance to sit in on some sessions that were just like, I'm on the other side of facilitating this, and what can I learn and what can I see? And it's really interesting to sit at a table and, when it comes time to do our ideating, right? Or as many notes as you can on a Post-it, to really pause and think, like, if I really want to get creative and step outside of what's going on here, like, I have started doing this, like just making a list of the assumptions that I think we're playing in, and how do I mess with those? So grades are always at the grading and assessment. Grades are always at the top of that list of, like, how do we tweak this? How do we mess with this? I'm feeling very devish, but I would be really curious. What are some of the assumptions you want to tear down in education? What are some of the assumptions you want to tear down?
But
do this?
Please. To preview a little bit of what's coming up, also at 10 o'clock, we're going to be talking with Ken Bauer about flipped classes. And so, I mean, for him, it's still the traditional idea of flipped, of how do you present the information. But I think there's also the idea of who's deciding on what information is getting presented. And so I think one of the assumptions, that's at this conference and just in general, is that we have instructional designers and we have faculty deciding on what content and how to deliver it to students. And I think part of what we're going to talk about with Ken is, how do you let the students decide what it is that they're there to learn, why they came in the first place, and how do you appreciate that and build the class around their needs?
So who's done really good work? So as soon as you say that, John, I think I'm still chewing on, Sean Michael Morris wrote a piece last week that was instructional designers are educators, and was within that kind of, I think, exploring still some of the notions we have about. Squeeze John in here, Dave.
I wanted to we got like 4 minutes left.
Oh, we were supposed to do John too?
Well, we were going to share you.
Well, here's what I was curious about. Sorry, I'll make this quick, and then, well, I probably won't. But look at this idea of online and digital learning still somewhat secondary in terms of quality and delivery to face-to-face learning. But I'm wondering if there's a hidden assumption in there that because we're just going to build this content and it's going to be static, that letting students decide really messes up how we build. And then how that means we're going to be constantly monitoring and rebuilding and shuffling around, and that's not how it's supposed to work. I wonder if that's like a piece to that. Like it's not even so sometimes it's a power dynamic, or it's a matter of like authority or control, but this one also almost seems to be a matter of like function and effort.
And the economics of how often can you rebuild an entire class. And it is something that I think is easier to do in face-to-face, where you can sort of negotiate the syllabus with the students, so you can give them the last quarter of a semester to work on a project or design what they're doing in the class. But thinking about how we can bring that into the online space and make that room and have that flexibility it's a challenge. It's not, I don't think it's easy, but the more autonomy and the more control we can give the students in a classroom, any kind of classroom, I think the better. But I think that's a big challenge. I think that's something that Sean in particular and Ken have been working on for a long time. Yesterday we talked to Laura Gibbs, and she's been ungrading for a long time now. And she was just sort of walking everybody through what does it mean to ungrade in the way that she does. And she has her students pick from this huge library of online stories that she's compiled of non-Western fiction, basically non-Western mythology, non-Western stories. And then she has her students adapt those. And her thing is just formative feedback and this iterative writing process that she wants all of her students to engage in. And so there's rarely a summative step of things finished. And so it's always just about, can you improve this a little bit more? And so it's not about, you got an 86 on this paper. It's, here's some things that were great about your paper and here's some things that you can improve. And the actual
where
labeling.
do you think you could take this next?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And her students love her. I would be afraid that the students would say there's no structure to this class, but somehow the students buy into it and love it. And I hope that she was able to share some of that with her folks yesterday. And she's been teaching online only for the last, I want to say 15 years. And so she's able to work that in, but it does take a lot of energy. And so I don't know how replicable that model is, but it's something that I'm chasing.
And that was part of the conversation with Eric, because his undergrad at Fairhaven was, and apparently Fairhaven, like from the get-go, began with narrative evaluation. So their transcript was literally a big stack of portfolio, a book essentially of narrative around their own perceived growth and learning, and a conversation between them and their instructors textually around their growth over time, at which he talked about taking that stack to his graduate schools and them being like,
well, yeah,
what do I do with this?
And that's a fascinating conversation of like, what does it look like on the other side of that when you take that stack?
Well, I think that's the challenge with all of this, right? Is part of the grading process is for credentialing. And so when you have these alternative credentials, whether it's a stack of narrative evaluations or badges, what do the people on the other end think about it? And so I think we're spending a good bit of time pondering badges for the last few years and coming out with different solutions with them. But narrative evaluation has been around for a while, and we're still trying to figure out what to do with them.
So there you have it.
We do on time.
We figured it out.
Good. I really like to color within the lines, minus the way we've framed you up here, Dave. So I love it.
Well, the next couple things on the docket is we've got a conversation with Dr. Virginia Shelton on implementation of using the quality scorecard, the OLC quality scorecard. Yep. And then after that is that conversation with Ken about flipping the classroom. And then 11 a.m., we've been talking about this a little bit, foreshadowing it here this morning, is the experiment of moving into an unconference in a virtual setting, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We just need some people to bring some topics they want to talk about and hand it over to the OLC Live crowd to tell us what they want to know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. 11 a.m.?
11 a.m. So we'll...
Is that going to be a collab between the Innovation Lab and...
We'd like to get some people here, live, sort of in the room conference, either in the room or down in the lab, and then sort of share it with virtual and in person.
Awesome. So we'll put a bookmark. Ben, thank you.
Dave Goodrich.
For taking the time to
chat. I love you.
And,
thanks.
Making this happen.
And John, all I can say to you is that I'm horrified. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ben. Where are you headed?